I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune Reset, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Autoimmune Reset podcast. I'm your host VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist and expert in autoimmune disease. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about fat digestion, hair health, and what most people often miss when it comes to this subject, because today's episode is one that I think will shift how you look at hair health quite significantly, because we're going to be talking about something that is rarely discussed in this space but plays a fundamental role, and that is fat digestion. Now, when we talk about hair loss, most of the conversations tends to focus on things like iron, ferritin levels, thyroid function, hormone stress, and of course all of those are important, but what I want to explore today is something slightly more foundational, because one of the questions I'm always asking in clinic is not just what are you eating, it's actually what are you actually absorbing and what is your body able to use, and fat digestion sits right at the center of that. So let's start with why this matters for hair, because hair is not essential for survival. Your body will always prioritize other systems first, like your brain, your immune system, your organs, which means hair is often one of the first places where we see the impact of nutrient deficiencies, inflammation, and physiological stress. The hair follicle itself is so sensitive. It's doing so much in such a tiny little organ, and we have 100,000 of them, and when there are changes in the body, it becomes affected very quickly. Now, many of the nutrients that are crucial for hair growth are either fat-soluble or heavily reliant on fat metabolism. We're talking about vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, your omega-3 fatty acids, even cholesterol. And these are not just nice to have nutrients, they are directly involved in your cell membrane integrity, your immune regulation around the hair follicle, how you resolve inflammation, which is important for hair growth, and ensuring that you don't have that inflammatory cascade around the hair follicle, hormone production, and the transition of hair from that resting to growing phase, which we need, especially if you are experiencing hair loss and you are looking for regrowth. So if fat digestion is impaired even slightly, it can have a cascade effect. You can be eating well, you can be taking supplements, but if you're not breaking down and absorbing fats effectively, those nutrients are not reaching the follicle in the way they need to. And it's something that I see when I am reviewing stool test results for my clients. I will often find that there is fat in their stool, and this gives me a really good indication that they are not digesting fat appropriately, and it often is combined with dysbiosis or inflammation or other things going on in the gut. So what actually is fat digestion? Because fat digestion is a coordinated process. It starts in the stomach, but the real work happens further down, involving the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. And the liver produces bile, which you might have heard of. The gallbladder is important because it stores and concentrates that bile. And when you eat fats, the gallbladder releases bile into the small intestine, and bile acts almost like a detergent. It emulsifies the fat, it breaks it into smaller droplets so that the enzymes that you produce can work on them. And without enough bile, or without proper bile flow, fats are not effectively digested. And this is where we start to see problems. When I'm working with clients, as I said, I will find that they have fat particles in the stool, and that is giving me an indication that they're not breaking down and absorbing those fats. The gallbladder is often overlooked, but it actually plays a crucial role here. If bile is not being released effectively, then fats are not broken down properly, and over time, this can lead to poor absorption of those fat-soluble vitamins that I mentioned, sluggish digestion, and even a buildup of toxins that should be eliminated through bile. The liver is, of course, equally important. It's responsible for producing the bile, but also for producing hormones, helping to eradicate toxins and metabolic waste. So when liver function is under pressure, whether that's from stress, environmental toxins, or hormonal shifts that a lot of us are experiencing, then bile production and flow can be impacted as well. Hormones can also influence this, and hormones and bile flow are actually closely linked. Estrogen in particular can make bile thicker and more sluggish, and this can happen with hormonal changes. It's often a symptom of perimenopause and menopause, and it can be when somebody is in a high estrogen state. And again, I will use something like the Dutch Plus hormone testing, and it gives me a really good indication of whether somebody has a lot of estrogen in their body, and it gives you the different types of estrogen and how well they are detoxifying estrogen as well. It's a really great test for that. But often when somebody has high estrogen, we see a reduction in efficient bile flow. So it's almost like a vicious circle, which is hard to get out of. And this can mean fat feels harder to digest. A common symptom is that after eating a fatty meal, you either have urgency to go to the toilet or just feeling really heavy or in pain. Nutrients are obviously not going to be absorbed as well, and symptoms start to appear elsewhere, which includes the skin and hair. Progesterone also plays a role in supporting smooth muscle function, including the gallbladder. So when progesterone is low, which often happens in perimenopause, bile release can become even less efficient. Then we have on top of that the impact of chemical toxicity and mould, because when I'm working with clients with hair loss and we have looked at improving their gut function and we have ensured that they have a lot of the right nutrients that they need, but they are still not seeing any regrowth, we have to start thinking about, well, what could be impacting you outside of diet and nutrition and your gut. And this is a layer that is often missed, because when it comes to chemical toxicity and mould, the liver is responsible for processing toxins. That's what it does, including chemicals from our environment. It might be in your skincare, plastics, and for some mould exposure. And when the body is dealing with a higher toxic load, the liver's capacity just becomes completely stretched. And I find this a lot with children because their detox system isn't as mature as an adult's detox system. So these toxins can build up a lot more easily, and that capacity can become even more stretched. And because bile is one of the main routes for eliminating toxins, this can affect bile production and flow. Mould exposure in particular can be quite deleterious here. It can increase inflammation, it can disrupt the microbiome, and place additional stress on our detox pathways. Because it's a question I often get asked, like, how is mold affecting me? And it can affect you in lots of different ways. It can affect the immune system, but this is a key piece of it, because that all feeds back into your digestion. And that's why we will use binders to help to eradicate mold and mold toxins. Now, when we're looking at the role of mold and bile excretion, this is where things become particularly important and often again overlooked, because when we talk about mold exposure, we're not just talking about inflammation and immune activation. We also have to talk about how the body actually removes these compounds. And many of the toxins produced by molds, which we call mycotoxins, and again, you can test for those, are processed by the liver and then excreted through bile. So the pathway would look like this. The liver identifies and processes the toxins, they're packaged up, and then they are excreted into bile. This is then released into the digestive tract and eliminated through the stool. So that's a healthy process. And this is one of the primary routes of clearance. Now, this is where the problem comes in. If bile production is low, or if bile flow is sluggish, or if the gallbladder isn't releasing the bile effectively, then the pathway becomes compromised. And instead of toxins being efficiently removed from the body, they can start to recirculate. This is what we often refer to enterohepatic recirculation. So rather than being excreted, these toxins are reabsorbed back into circulation, continuing to stimulate the immune system and contribute to inflammation. And this creates a bit of a loop because mould exposure increases toxic load. That places even more demand on the liver. That can then slow down bile production, and slower bile flow reduces toxin clearance. So the body becomes, in a sense, congested. And when this happens, digestion is often affected alongside it. Fat digestion then becomes less efficient, nutrient absorption is reduced, and inflammatory signalling increases. And again, we start to see the knock-on effect on systems like the skin and hair. And that's why when we're looking at the root cause, yes, the gut can be at the root of it. But if you don't see improvements in your gut health, or you have been working on your gut health and nothing is happening or nothing seems to be progressing in the way that you would expect, that's when we have to dig deeper. It's not actually the gut that's at the root. It could be that you have some form of environmental exposure. And again, it's going to be different for everybody. It doesn't mean if you are experiencing hair loss or autoimmune disease or gut issues that this is a factor for you, but it's just something to consider. And if you have done a stool test, it's worth looking at whether there was any fat present in your stool, because this could be a factor for you if that's the case. Let's bring it back to hair though, because if the body is struggling to clear toxins effectively, it will prioritize detoxification and immune defense over growth processes like hair. And at the same time, if fat digestion is impaired due to poor bile flow, you're not absorbing the nutrients needed to support the hair follicle. It's all about the hair follicle when it comes to hair growth. Different types of hair loss as well. There's different mechanisms involved, but actually it is to do with the health of the hair follicle. So you have this combination of increased internal stress and inflammation, which affects the hair follicle. It breaks down that immune privilege, which is so vital in conditions like alopecia areata. And it's also going to reduce the nutrient availability, which often means the hair is pushed into that telogen phase and it doesn't stay in that growth phase because it doesn't have the nutrients to grow the hair. And that is not an environment where hair is going to thrive. This is why, in practice, simply detoxing without supporting bile flow can sometimes make people feel worse. Because if you're mobilizing toxins, but the body doesn't have a clear pathway to eliminate them, you're effectively stirring things up without clearing them, and this can become problematic. So a lot of the work here is about supporting the liver, supporting bile production and flow, and supporting gut function so those toxins can actually leave the body. And there's a project that I have been using for many years now called LVGB by Designs for Health. And I'm not encouraging you to use it because this might not be a factor for you, but I found so many people who have used this supplement. I've used it myself. I've seen such great results from using it and actually just feel better. And they notice a difference in the digestion. I mean, so many people, when they have digestive symptoms, are going for a probiotic. But the truth is we need to support the organs that are part of this process. And yes, some people will need a probiotic, but some people really just need to support the liver, the gallbladder, and when they do that, actually their digestion massively improves as a result. So rather than just trying to push detoxification harder, have a think about the whole picture as well. Now let's talk about the gut bacteria and LPS and inflammation, which I think is important here. And this is interconnected as well because certain gut bacteria play a role in regulating bile. They help to break down and recycle bile acids, which is vital. And when there is dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in the gut microbiome, this process can become disrupted. Some bacteria can actually deconjugate bile acids too early, making them less effective. And that's a process of detoxification. There are different pathways in detoxification, and this is one of them. But others can contribute to increased inflammation as well. And then we have LPS, which is lipopolysaccharide. I've talked about it on the podcast before. And these are endotoxins found in the outer membrane of certain bacteria, especially gram-negative bacteria. And you can find out if you have a high abundance of these bacteria from doing a stool test. So when the gut barrier is compromised, this LPS can enter circulation. So if you have leaky gut, you have a high abundance of these bacteria that create LPS, you've got inflammation, I can then understand the mechanism and understand what I need to do to support my clients who have this fact pattern. I'm not seeing this in everybody. There are different patterns that I'm seeing in different people, but it is certainly one that I'm seeing quite often because LPS triggers an inflammatory process in the body, and this inflammation can disrupt the hair follicle function. As I said, it's extremely sensitive. If something is happening in the body, it's more than likely to affect the hair follicle as well. It can affect immune signaling. It can switch on these immune pathways which are not switching off. And that is an important mechanism here to remember. And a lot of the medications that they use for hair loss, it's all about switching off that inflammatory pathway. So can we do that naturally instead? And it can also increase oxidative stress. And when there's free radicals and oxidative stress around the hair follicle, it's going to cause damage. It's going to cause a breakdown of that immune privilege, which means that the immune system can then target the follicle and create damage, which means the hair is not going to be able to grow. And importantly, it can also interfere with bile flow and liver function, as we are talking about. So again, we see this cycle of poor gut health, which affects bile. We then have poor bile, which affects fat digestion, and impaired fat digestion affects nutrient status and inflammation, which then affects hair growth. So let's talk about the knock-on effect of the nutrients and minerals that are going to be impacted when you are not digesting fats optimally, because this is when it starts to compound. If fats are not being digested properly, fat-soluble vitamins are not absorbed efficiently. So we have vitamin A, which is essential for cell turnover and scalp health. And I see this deficiency a lot in my clients. I don't think we're eating enough of the active form of vitamin A. A lot of people are eating beta carotene from those orange coloured vegetables, but are we getting the retinol that we need from, say, organ meats or cod liver oil? For the most part, animal products. If not, we need to make sure that we're getting enough. And if you have an issue with fat digestion as well, it's just, again, like a compound effect. Vitamin D plays a role in immune modulation and hair follicle cycling. We can get it from the sun as well. We get some from our diet as well. Vitamin D is important, not just about absorbing and digesting it, but how we're able to utilize it. So getting it from different sources is good. There's also vitamin E, which is such a powerful antioxidant, so that can help with oxidative stress. Vitamin K, which is essential for circulation. I mean, there's a huge piece around circulation when it comes to hair loss as well. And at the same time, fat digestion is linked to the absorption of certain minerals, including zinc and magnesium, which are critical for hair growth and immune balance. So over time, what we can see is subtle but significant deficiencies. It might not happen all at once. What I often find when I'm working with children is they will have been ill, something might have happened to them, they've taken antibiotics. This happened to me, by the way, and maybe just not being the best around eating, might be a picky eater or just doesn't have much of an appetite. Sometimes this can be a fact pattern. And at first, those nutrient deficiencies don't show up. And then there's something that triggers this autoimmune response after a couple of years of, just not getting the right nutrients in. And then there's that tipping point. And somebody then experiences hair loss, which I'm sure was the case for me as well. There was a tipping point, which was a stressful event, but actually it was leading up to that for years before. It can also cause increased inflammation and reduced resilience at the hair follicle, which is what we are trying to build with our diet, with making sure that certain systems in our body are also working optimally and balanced and harmonized, because that is the state that your body needs to be in for your body to start prioritizing health. And we can look at this and think, well, why me? Why do I need to be in such optimal health for hair growth? And that's just part of life. There are these certain genes, there's gene expression. So it's not just about having the genes, it's how we're expressing those genes. And everybody is going to have certain genes that aren't in their favor. And some of these genes are actually in your favor, just not in the culture and environment we are living in today. There may be a reason why we developed this oversensitivity to certain antigens in the body. And, there is this adaptive and evolutionary process, which, there's an argument around that around genes. I'm saying this because, it can feel very much like, well, why is this happening to me? Why do I have to make sure that I'm digesting fat properly? I see somebody who sits next to me who's got the most amazing hair, and she's eating cereal for breakfast and convenience food, and why is she getting away with it? But everybody is different, and there might be something that is impacting her. So as long as you are doing your best, it's always best not to compare yourself as well. But I just wanted to kind of set that out, because it can be frustrating that you need to be in this optimal health for hair growth. But I find that once the hair comes out, you really do have to boost yourself up to get the growth again. But then maintaining it is not as difficult, because that's what I'm doing now. I'm maintaining that. And I am very conscious about my health. I mean, I work in health. I'm so excited about health. So it's just something that comes naturally to me now. But you can still be extremely healthy and have lots of fun as well. It's not all about restriction. It's actually about nourishment. So let's talk about some signs that your fat digestion might need some extra support. The signs that I look for are bloating after fatty meals. You might be feeling heavy or sluggish after eating. Those pale or floating stools, so it's always worth checking that. Constipation, if you have dry skin, dry lips or dry eyes, that's a major giveaway that there's something going on with fat metabolism or fat digestion. Hormonal imbalances can be a factor as well. And sometimes just a sense that things aren't moving as efficiently as they should. But equally, it can be more subtle, and it can simply be that you're doing everything right, but you're just not seeing the results that you'd expect. And again, you can see this on a stool test as well. I'll have clients come to me and they don't really feel like there's an issue with digestion, and then we find markers like this that are out of range. This is the part where I want to keep things simple and actionable, because this isn't about removing fats. In fact, avoiding fats often makes this worse over time. We want to support the body in digesting them properly. So first is to slow down when you eat. It's taken me years to get to this point, and I'm still working on it, because digestion starts in the nervous system, and if you're rushing, distracted or stressed when you're eating, you're not in a state where digestion can function optimally. And it's one of the first questions that I will ask my clients if I find that they're not digesting protein or fat very well. Include fats consistently, because if you avoid them, then your body isn't used to digesting them. So we want to gently build up tolerance to these fats. So think about introducing olive oil if you're not already, oily fish, eggs and avocado, and then just build up how much fat you can tolerate over time. The third is to use bitter foods, because these can really help to stimulate bile flow and the digestive process. So things like rocket, you can have a rocket salad before a meal. I love chicory root, lemon or lemon zest, just putting lemon zest in a meal. Even apple cider vinegar can be really helpful in stimulating that bile production. Fourth is to support your liver and bile flow, and this might include foods like beetroot, artichoke. There's an artichoke leaf tea that I like by Aquasol, and a lot of people that try that tea don't really like it. There are some other artichoke teas on the market as well, so worth having a look into that. And leafy greens. And in some cases, I might take a more targeted approach if needed with a client, because there are some great supplements out there that can help with this too. And the fifth is to look at gut health, of course, because if there is dysbiosis, then this needs to be addressed, because otherwise you're working against the system. Working on the gut, working on the liver, working on the gallbladder, they all go hand in hand. And when you work with a practitioner, they'll decide which area is most appropriate to start with, because there's always kind of a structure and a strategy when it comes to a protocol around this. And finally, look at your overall load. Have you got a lot of stress in your life? Could there be toxins in your environment? Are you going through hormonal changes, or could there be hormonal balances? Because these all feed into digestion. So it's about reducing the burden on the body, not just adding more in. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's this. It's not just about what you eat, it's about what you can break down, absorb and use. And fat digestion is a critical part of that process. If you've experienced hair loss and you're looking for regrowth and things aren't progressing as you'd hoped, it may not be that you need to do more. It may be that your body needs more support in the foundations like digestion, absorption, and inflammation, because when those are in place, everything else becomes more effective. So thank you for listening today. If this resonated with you and you want to explore this further, you will find more information in the show notes about some of the testing that I've mentioned as well. If you have any questions about this, then feel free to pop over to my Instagram account, which is at the Autoimmunity Nutritionist. And if you are keen to explore things yourself, then I will put a link to an application form if you would like to work together, ready to start making changes for your health. You're interested in the functional testing, then I'd love to hear from you. You can also join my free group, the Autoimmune Forum. It's always great to hear from people over there as well. If not, I'll see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time, and remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.